3 years ago, I set out to construct the most powerful nootropic stack for focus, motivation, and sheer cognitive horsepower. I logged hundreds of hours, sampled endless amounts of cognitive performance chemicals, and ran beta tests with soldiers from the United States Army. And after massive experimentation and ruthless trial and error, my work had finally paid off. I found what I was looking for.
As we often say, the target for Cortex, for me building a commercial nootropic stack, was manyfold, multifold. It was, let's build a stack that allows me, as an entrepreneur who has to wake up at 9 a.m. and basically what works till 11 or 12 midnight, basically trying to build a business and marketing and doing everything that's involved in running a company, being an entrepreneur. Let's make a stack for people like that need ruthless mental endurance and total mental dominance and extreme verbal fluency throughout the day. They got to talk to people and do sales or talk to customers or do whatever. And the ability to hone in on tasks, focus, working memory, fluidity, speed of processing. Let's build a stack like that. I looked around at other stacks and I was like props to everybody. I'm a fan of Aubrey Marcus, who makes this, CEO of On It, that makes Alpha Brain. But I mean, a lot of the stacks were run of the mill and none of them really, I took all of them. None of them really put me in a place where I had been functioning optimally compared to a stack that I was sort of taking on and off throughout my experimentation with nootropics over the years, which eventually ended up being the Cortex stack. We put the two main ingredients, uridine monophosphate and CDP-choline, together, both of which are substrates for phosphatidylcholine in conjunction with DHA and B vitamins. If you get them in your diet, you don't have to worry about it. You can just take the Cortex stack, facilitate neurogenesis and cellular repair. Very, very powerful stuff. Looking at nootropics, it's kind of interesting when you got multifactorial nootropics, meaning they work on many neurochemicals in the brain and modulate receptor sites, right? They're not just like stimulating AMPA receptors, one of glutamate's receptors, and stimulating you, as is the case with aniracetam. I mean, aniracetam also tells the hippocampus to release more acetylcholine, which is good. But beyond that, it might just sort of stop there. It is, the Cortex stack, according to studies on uridine and basically everything else, is inhibiting GABA partially. It is increasing acetylcholine. It is positively modulating dopamine receptors. It is improving axon and dendrite growth. It is improving membrane fluidity and integrity, phosphatidylcholine specifically. So we're doing a lot with this stack, and that's why when you take it and 20 or 30 minutes later, you get a strong urge to work and your brain works better and your verbal fluency is on point and your focus is powerful. That's why we built the stack for people to notice. SecureBottleLiveCortex.com, of the Cortex Nootropic Stack. We made it for people to crank work out and to have exceptional brain performance. We did not want it to be subtle. We may make a stack in the future that's subtle. Who knows? But we wanted Cortex to basically be a home run. Our beta testers wanted a natural form of modafinil, and that's what we targeted. LiveCortex.com. Don't wait. LiveCortex.com. Secure bottle of what's being called the only pre-made stack that actually works. Okay, so epic coffee break. Let's talk about racetams and headaches. Big elephant in the room here, huh, guys? Well, the deal is that I guess traditionally when people think about racetams and headaches is that racetams like piracetam, aniracetam, oxiracetam, pramiracetam, they tell the hippocampus and they tell parts of the brain to release extra acetylcholine. So the brain is in this mode of trying to use extra of that neurochemical to sort of keep up with the direction from the racetams to tell them to release it. So as a result, it has been hypothesized. There's really nowhere where that's proven at all. We're just sort of looking at the mechanisms and people are drawing conclusions. It's actually really, I don't want to call it a myth because we don't know if it's true or not, but it's really just a hypothesis that the racetam headaches are caused by lack of acetylcholine in the brain. Like if you haven't eaten enough of dietary choline to synthesize the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, perhaps you have a B5 deficiency, which helps in the synthesis of acetylcholine. And that might be the problem. And so that's what people sort of postulated. Nutriment, popular website around nootropics, basically it's just the same thing, to take a choline source and this is why. But they do talk about the caveat, which is, that extra piece of missing information, which is that some people take, acetylcholine precursors with racetams and still get headaches. Why does that happen? And I want to just sort of propose a couple of additional hypotheses, because there are still hypotheses at this point, because nothing is really set in stone. There's no PubMed studies that do like double-blind, crossover, placebo-controlled studies on why, and try to identify why people are getting headaches when they take racetams with or without a cholinergic, with or without a precursor to acetylcholine. And so, first, I would like to say this. What no one ever talks about is vitamin B5. I always talk about that because it's required in the synthesis of acetylcholine. It's easy enough to have a B5 deficiency. I mean, you could have vitamin deficiencies and not know it. So I think number one, if people are taking racetams, they're taking adequate amounts of choline via alpha GPC or choline bitartrate or CDP choline or something, and they're still getting headaches. First of all, I'd probably dial the choline source down. A lot of people are taking way too much, 300-400 milligrams. I mean, that might cause a headache. But secondly, I would make sure you're taking, I would just go all out and take a complex B vitamin, because they all sort of work synergistically with one another, B vitamins. But particularly one that has, at the very least, the RDA for B5. I'm quite sure a lot of them have much more than the RDA for B5. But pantothenic acid, you're going to need that to synthesize acetylcholine. And if somehow in your brain, people have many mutations and many sort of differences, many deficiencies, many reasons why they may not be, look, epic coffee break. I need coffee. Why they may not be synthesizing a neurochemical. This happens all the time, right? Like, go read about the motherfucker gene and how, all these MTHFR mutations in people and how that affects like methylation and all this crap in people. It's insane, right? So it's not far-fetched to think that B5 could help in the racetam headache situation. But I would like to propose a different idea, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. I might have gotten a racetam headache once or twice in my life, and my experience kind of plays a little bit into this. And I sort of did some reading about it, years ago, and hypothesized about this, but never talked about it. And ever since, then I'm looking at some of the things I'm doing that might increase cerebral blood flow to keep up with the usage of cerebral blood flow when I take racetams. And particularly that is running in the morning, doing a couple miles of cardio. It's also meditating every day, which we know increases cerebral blood flow. But it's also what I've been doing as of the last couple years, and it's just sort of something I can't believe I haven't mentioned this or talked about it. I just sort of know like this is what I should do, is taking vinpocetine when I take racetams. And that is to improve the brain's blood flow while taking racetams. So here's the hypothesis. First, I think we should look at a giant study called Piracetam Improves Activated Blood Flow and Facilitates Rehabilitation of Post-Stroke Aphasic Patients, where it basically talks about people who had strokes, and then they gave them piracetam, and a whole bunch of things improved in their brain, not the least of which was blood flow, but blood flow to certain activated regions. And the regions of the brain that were activated from piracetam were regions involved in language processing, and parts of the left prefrontal cortex. A significant enhancement of blood flow change at the end of treatment was observed only in the left hemisphere, in the piracetam group. Significantly higher in the left. Blood flow was significantly higher in the left transverse temporal gyrus, left triangular part of inferior frontal gyrus, and left posterior superior temporal gyrus after the treatment period. Combined with the initial measures, the placebo group showed an increase of activation effect only in the left vocalization area. So what we're basically looking at, and we know that racetams improve blood flow. They send more blood to the activated areas, is what this study is saying. And that's effectively what I'm concluding, trying to study this and have been trying to understand it all. That, if you've got better verbal fluency from taking piracetam, part of that is because you've got more blood flow in the areas of the brain that allow you to function in a verbally fluent capacity, to be eloquent, right? Language processing, these sorts of things. So the hypothesis really is that perhaps you are sending more blood to one part of the brain because this just said you're only sending blood to the left hemisphere of the brain, and you are therefore potentially taking blood from another part of the brain, perhaps parts of the right hemisphere. And this may be what is causing for some people who aren't able to manipulate choline sources, etc., for their headaches. Blood flow, a blood flow mismatch. The brain is going, look, you've got these activations from the racetam here in the left hemisphere, and so we're going to send a bunch of blood there. And so we're getting that blood flow from, if we're not trying to improve blood flow in some other means, then are we taking blood from another area that is now constricting blood flow in that area, which might give you a headache? Possibly. So that's kind of the other interesting theory about it. And I had thought about this and did a little research on it, and I just sort of came to recognize, I need to either run, meditate, or take vinpocetine, which improves oxygen and blood flow to all three of those things improve oxygen and blood flow to the brain. After this was when I got my first Racetam headache. It was a long time ago. And since then, I either did one of those three things every time I took a Racetam, and I never got a Racetam headache again. And for me, it never has to do with, it never had to do with acetylcholine. It just never did for me. Whether I took, 1,000 milligrams of aniracetam and no choline source, or whether I took 1,000 milligrams of aniracetam, and 200 milligrams of alpha GPC, I didn't get a headache. Maybe the racetam is a little more potentiated via having the extra acetylcholine. That seems clear to me, at least in my brain. But never did I have a headache one way or the other as it related to cholinergics, as it related to acetylcholine quantity. And so for me, I just sort of postulated it had to do with blood flow, and looking at this study, and how piracetam particularly, we know the racetams work similarly, are sending blood to activated regions of the brain in response to the drug. This might be taking blood from other regions of the brain. So if anyone wants to go experiment with whether or not that's true, if I've got subscribers here that take racetams and get headaches, you might want to look at trying to run that day. Go for a 2-mile run, 3-mile run, get some cardio, get some blood flow to the brain. You might want to look at a 45 to 50 minute meditation session. You really need to get in there for the deep meditation to get the blood flow in the brain, I think. Or you might want to look at 5 milligrams of vinpocetine, which is a natural nootropic substance that improves oxygen and blood flow in the brain that is also neuroprotective. That is my hypothesis. I think a lot of folks that might have that issue should definitely try it. Please get back with me. Email me at ryan@livecortex.com or comment on this video if you've got something to say about that, or if you've tried it and it works for you. Because I think that there's something just a little bit more to the racetam headache dynamic other than merely a lack of acetylcholine. Thanks for watching.